Welcome to another episode of Tai'Shar Manethrin, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Will.
I'm Sam.
And we're excited to be continuing in The Shadow Rising. So, chapter 46, I believe, Sam?
Yeah. Back to chapter 46. Back to Agianan. You get a little moment of her where she's following Florian Gelb. Find out if he really has a Soldam, and he has kidnapped women who are not Soldam, so she's skeptical. And he has set up an ambush for Nynaeve. Agianan sees that and says, "Oh, we're going to warn Gelb that, let's not do this." And then we switch quickly over to Elaine's point of view. And it's funny, they're walking down the street and she's complaining about how they should have hired one of the bearers to walk them through the crowd like the chair. But they're walking around carrying sticks on their shoulder, which is just kind of a funny image of them just walking around with a stick.
Elaine mentions the veils that they wear in Tanchico.
Oh, right.
And
right.
I don't remember where I saw it. Somebody pointed it out to me that the reason why Elaine is the only one who says she doesn't know how they don't always have the veils in their mouth. It's because Matt says that Elaine always has her nose in the air. And so it's actually a really great little Easter egg that she's the only one that can't figure out how to keep the veil out of her mouth because her nose is in the air the whole time.
Oh, that's a good point. So then they commence with the fisticuffs when the Florian Gelb's toughs attack. Nynaeve whacks one over the head with her stick. So they're trying not to channel because they don't want to tip off the Black Aja, but they have to. They end up having to anyway.
Right.
Elaine hurls this dude into the air in a backflip. It's a kind of a fun image. She just kind of punches him in the face with a flow of air.
Right.
And then but Agianan totally noticed that, and she sort of had helped. They're like, "Hey, come have lunch with us as thanks for helping us out," giving us a little bit of warning there. Julian is there, and he says he's found where the Black Aja were staying, but they're gone now. The innkeeper Rendra is there and takes him to a private room for tea. Tom shows up and says that Amathera, who's the Panarch, thank you, about to be invested, and the White Cloaks have kind of moved her into the area, into her palace. But this is the sort of thing that he was worried would happen, so he's kind of trying to keep a close eye on it. And so, but he says that he wants the ladies to have bodyguards. But then Agianan recognizes Baal Doman and is like, "Oh crud, I gotta get out of here." So then the innkeeper comes back and says they have a visitor, which turns out to be a Forsaken,
right?
Who just comes in and uses compulsion on them and just kind of asks them questions. And it's interesting to see this. We know, of course, who this is, but it's the difference between this particular Forsaken and say the one that randomly killed that accepted at the farm, just for no reason. This is clearly a very different approach to skullduggery here. If it had been Lanfear or I don't know, Grandol, maybe they would have just killed him after asking questions. But this particular Forsaken
wouldn't have let them just get off like this.
Right. It just kind of makes them forget that these are not the droids you're looking for, sort of thing, and figures out that they don't have the information she needs, and okay, forget about me, and I'm gone. And they're like, "Oh, what a nice lady that was."
Right. Really, it's one of the first times we see compulsion used like that. I mean, it's been used on people kind of off stage, so to speak, but
not in person like this. Yeah, it's the Imperious Curse kind of thing.
Yep.
So on to 47. This is the chapter in which Swan, the Amerlin seat, is deposed and is stilled and all that fun stuff. Elida comes in, kind of rips the stole from Swan's shoulders, and they knife her warder Ulrich in the back, and throw her in jail with Lyanna.
I've got to say, this on first reading really took me by surprise. I actually,
me too, for sure.
I didn't think that it was going to be like this, and upon rereading it, I'm just struck by, for one thing, how much it's clear that they are defying really all formality, all really the Tower Law, by the way that they're handling this. That it was all not the way it was supposed to
Oh
have
yeah, I
been
mean the
done.
fact that they killed her warder, like,
Right.
man, that's not how it's supposed to go down.
There was no trial for her. They just kind of convinced themselves, oh, she'd be too dangerous,
Right.
and so they just stilled her on the spot.
Yeah, I was looking back. Did they? I don't think we actually get the moment where she's stilled, which is sort of
Correct.
interesting. It
Yes.
happens off camera.
Yep. I don't know that we ever really see a proper stilling.
Right, like, especially
Um,
from the perspective, like, this is when it would have happened, when we would have seen it from the
right.
perspective of somebody that went through it. That is interesting that and that happens. Jordan does that periodically, where these sort of big events will happen just off camera,
Yeah.
and that's just a stylistic choice. It's fine.
Well, it's kind of vaguely Shakespearean, the way that a lot of the big battle scenes and everything, and a lot of the tragedies and whatever kind of take place off
Right, right.
stage.
I think there's a fair point to me that me made there. There was like, so it goes, we shift to Men briefly, where she realizes there's some craziness going on, and basically she realizes this is the vision she had, of all of what
Right.
was happening. She sees Gawain, what we later find out are called the Younglings, who are going to fight the Warders. And he tells her that Swan's been deposed, and he's just like, get out of here. But she doesn't do that. She goes to figure out what she can do to help. And really, and I do want to talk about Gawain more. It really, his character changes so much
He does. Yeah.
quickly. He starts
Yeah.
out as just this kind of like this wide-eyed kid who's, really sort of fawning after Egwene, and he becomes like this battle-hardened,
Right.
commander really quick.
Well, and to some degree, Men, because she's been playing this character for a while, it's easy to forget that she's not that kind of feminine girly girl.
Right, right.
And she kind of shifts into John McClane and Nakatomi Plaza mode, and
Yeah, she
like
does.
we got, I got to walk on the broken glass and go down the elevator shaft and whatever.
Well played, well played. So she decides she's going to go try to help Swan, particularly. But we shift back to Swan, and this is where the stilling has happened off camera. And she says, despite herself, she tried to embrace Saidar. There was nothing there, not for her, only the emptiness inside. Never again. A lifetime of purpose, and now she was rudderless, adrift on a sea far darker than the cell.
Right.
Of course, we got to have our sailing reference there.
Yes, the dark night of the soul kind of moment for Swan here.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know who really I feel bad for in this moment is Liana, because Liana was not
She
in
wasn't right. She wasn't in on
on
the conspiracy to find
right,
the
the dragon.
dragon, and she didn't know about how Moraine and Swan were still close. And yeah, she was just sort of a casualty of war, really.
I mean, and now she wakes up next to Swan, stilled also,
Right, right.
and you're like feel for her because it's like
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
isn't really her fault. Like,
Exactly. So Min and Laris, the cook, have decided they're going to free Swan and Liana. So, but then Min walks in and is like, doesn't recognize them, because this gets back to the whole they are stilled, and
right,
it's magically in that moment the agelessness disappears. That still bothers me, like how
yeah,
that whole thing works. It's like
it doesn't
suddenly
make
they're young
sense.
again. Like,
They should, if anything, it should be like in the comics when Captain America had the super soldier serum drained out of him. He became,
exactly, became an old man. Yeah.
that's the same kind of thing that should happen. But
Mhm.
it's the way it is in the books.
Yeah, yeah,
Whatever.
it becomes a sort of a central part of their
Right.
characters going
Yeah.
forward, and then they do some fun things with it, and so it's
Right.
okay.
There's a way in which Swan kind of a little bit reverts to a younger version of herself too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she kind of becomes childish acting and petulant,
Right.
and like, because she's
Yeah.
so used to being this powerful person, and suddenly she doesn't have the respect and authority of the Emerald
Right.
seat, and so she kind of stamps her foot a little bit and
Right.
throws a temper tantrum.
And this is why I would rather them cast somebody younger and age her up, either digitally
Sure,
or with
yeah. I think they
prosthetics.
almost have to. They
Yeah.
really do, because being young looking is so central to Swan and Liana's characters after
Right.
this happens, that yeah,
Exactly.
you pretty much have to have a younger person, almost someone who's as young as like the Taviran,
Right.
almost to
Yeah.
that point, and just make sure it's someone who is kind of has an old soul, kind of
Right.
like they can
Yeah.
play it up, but is young looking, because it's just because so often moving forward, they're not taken seriously because the people just assume they're like,
Right.
in their early 20s or whatever.
Yeah, which plays to their advantage.
It does because they're they have all the wisdom and experience of Aes Sedai that have been and she's only been it's not like she's that old in reality.
Yeah.
I think it was like 20 years before when she and Moraine were accepted, so she's probably only in her like 40s,
Right.
but she looks like she's in her 20s. So
Yep.
they break them out.
Gawain steps out,
Right.
recognizing Bella.
Exactly. And he's like, tell me where Egwene and Elaine are. And they basically don't know. This is where we get a really interesting moment where Min sees. So this gets back to her whole theory about Min's ability, where she sees,
Right.
and this is the only time so far, she sees a dual aura where
Right.
either Gawain could be killing Egwene
Yeah.
or by breaking her neck or kneeling at her feet. And Min genuinely doesn't know which one is going to happen. And
Yeah.
it's like this is like this two potential futures for Gawain. It's just sort of
Yeah.
interesting.
So it does kind of fly in the face a little bit of my claim earlier that they're totally useless.
Well, I think that up until this point they were.
Right.
Like this is the first one that could be useful. I mean, and she doesn't like tell him about it or anything.
Right.
But like
Exactly. You think she would mention this?
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like
Hey.
she, it's in the middle of this kind of extreme moment, but
Right.
yeah, and I think it shocks her a little bit,
Right.
Because she still has this image in her head of Gawain as this just kind of goofy kid who
Right.
fawns after Egwene, and seeing this aura probably shocks her a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, she could have said something like, "Hey, man, don't choke out Egwene."
Yeah. Moving on to chapter 48. Meanwhile, back in the waste.
Right. Avienda is once again scolding Rand for looking at any woman other than Elaine.
Right.
Because there's Isindra, who
Right.
is this sultry woman that's
Yeah.
with Hadnan Kadir and is pretty clearly wants to seduce Rand. We see that over and over again moving
Right.
forward. I mean, I think there was a moment earlier where that happened, and Avienda is just having none of it. And of course, Rand doesn't care
He's-
about her. Matt's
Right.
made a pass at her, or whatever, but
Because she has a pulse.
right, exactly. Rand has, they've tried to get him to wear like the Cadensor or something like that, and he's, like, I'm not gonna do that, even though I'm he who comes with the dawn, because I'm not Aiel. Even though I look Aiel, I'm not Aiel. And so this whole time, Avienda has been trying to educate him on the Aiel culture and the way Ji'ito works. He listens, and it's interspersed with insults
Right.
about him and Elaine. And so Moraine wants to try to figure out what his plans are, and he of course knows that's what she's trying to do and refuses to tell her. Egwene is still with the wise ones. Rand practices the sword with Lan some. He's also trying to learn the Aiel way of fighting by training with Ruark.
Yeah.
So he's like kind of going back and forth, fighting with Lan with the sword and Ruark with the spear, which I'm sure the Aiel the whole time he's using the sword are probably like horrified that
Right.
he's touching a sword.
Not at all remembering that the whole reason why they are not supposed to touch a sword is because they were actually pacifists.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, well, I'm touching a spear, not a sword, so it doesn't count.
Right. Nanny nanny boo boo.
So Kadir tries to get Rand to
Guarantee safety.
guarantee protection. Then we do get a moment of Natale talking to him because he wants to try to get info for his epic composition, allegedly. So one day Avienda is they're walking and Avienda just throws a fireball.
Yeah.
And so it just shows that the wise one's approach to training how to channel is way different from the White Tower. That is not the way the Aes Sedai would be training
Right.
Avienda, because it's very practical. Like they're 100% trying to show her how to learn how to channel so you can fight and
use it as a weapon.
Yeah, exactly. So then they get to Cold Rock's Hold, though, which is the home of Ruark.
And I really hope that they visually do Cold Rock's Hold justice, because the image that
it is a really cool image. That's a good point.
Jordan paints is very, very interesting. This whole kind of built
like in
into
caves, like in the side of a mountain kind of thing.
It seems like it could be a really, I mean, even if they have to do it almost all CG and it looks
that's okay.
a little dodgy,
I don't mind that. Yeah, that's
I don't mind
okay.
that. I just want them to
just give us a moment of that epic kind of like
Right.
the epicness of it. But yeah, this is where we get the kind of sort of comical moment of Ruark introducing his other wife.
Yeah.
And Matt's like, what on earth? You have two wives?
It's a little like that moment in Ferris Bueller when the principal's like, "So that's how it is in their family." Um, that's kind of the way it feels like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
exactly. And it really isn't. This is funny because it's like this is a bit of a filler chapter, but it's also just kind of fun. They
right."
they like have dinner, and we get a little bit of the Aiel food, some goat meat.
We also get an explanation of what a roof mistress is.
Right? Yeah, they have a meal of spiced goat and peppers, some sort of fruit called cardon. And so it's interesting to see like the little bit of their food. Avienda is still being true like, and Rand's like, I'm gonna give her a gift. Maybe just make her a little nicer. We could see that's gonna backfire. You
You're
should
right,
you should
yeah.
know that's gonna backfire.
And even as hard as he tries, because he goes around and asks, "Is this going to offend her? Is this
Right.
gonna be a problem?" And the other maidens of the
They
spear are
just
like,
treat it like a
"No,
huge
that'd be
joke.
great. Yeah." And
Right.
yeah, they're like, "Go ahead and
Oh
do it." And
no.
he's just like, "Oh, okay, sure, I will do it."
Right, yeah, like nothing can go wrong with this plan. And so it's
Yes.
like this little moment of in the midst of all these like Trolloc fights and these epic moments, we have this little chapter of just Rand being clueless about Aiel
Right.
culture and meet the parents kind of moment, so to speak.
Exactly. Well, Avienda, meanwhile, is kind of in trouble with the wise ones because Rand continues to display a level of ignorance about their culture, and they're kind of blaming Avienda. And so she has to beat out rugs and do different things like that
Right, right.
because they blame her for him not having figured stuff out.
So he gives her a bracelet, and which she is just super upset about, clearly, and not even just rolling her eyes, like really upset about it. And he just does not understand.
Well, and she does explain to him because he's like, "I asked if this would be cool, and they all said yes.
He's like, "Oh, they would."
They think you're interested in me."
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, well, should I take it back then?" And she's like, "No, then they'd be angry at you because then you would be shaming me."
Right, right,
And then
right.
he's I mean, so there's just no way I can win right now.
So Rand has a dream, another dream of swimming with women, with Elaine and men in Avienda. It's like he's had the same similar dream before, but this time Lanfear shows up.
Right.
Is like a vampire kind of
Sure,
biting his
because she
neck.
doesn't want her man.
Yeah, that's very strange. And then a man appears, like in the midst of Rand having this dream. These people show up and are like talking about him.
Yep.
Pretty bad. But so then he wakes up and sudden Trolloc attack. Another one. We get ourselves a sudden drag car attack, but then it's a sudden
Right.
Trolloc attack. We switch over to Matt, who is fighting Trollocs with his Ashandarai, cursing Rand, of course. Handles himself well, tries to impress Ascendre, but she ignores him.
They notice that the Shido have left. The Shido were allowed to camp outside. We kind of skipped that part a little bit.
Oh, we did. You're right. Mhm.
But the
Outside
Shido
of
were
Cold Rock's
allowed
Hold.
to,
Right.
yeah, camp outside, and there was kind of I had to actually reread this part multiple times to try to understand it because all of the ceremony of greeting when it comes to Aiel, understanding that there's these subtle differences, that one way is insulting and one way is honoring, and they sound very similar. And so that essentially the roof mistress of Cold Rock's Hold more or less said, no, you can't stay here,
Right.
and to Couladin, but Couladin had been kind of insulting by approaching her as if he
As
were
if he
a
was a
clan
clan
chief.
chief and he's not.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But we find out they've left and headed for Al-Kerdal, and so Rand's like, "Oh crud, we need to go. We need to go there now ourselves." And Ruark, because of this attack, the maidens volunteer to protect Rand at all times, and so becomes a theme going forward, that the maidens are sort of in charge of keeping him safe.
yeah,
That's when this is when that starts, when this begins. So then we shift back to Elaine and Nynaeve, kind of been ping ponging back and forth between them.
this is the scene where Baeldoma knocks on the door, enters, and he recognizes Hagianan immediately, and the two start fighting. And the
Right.
description does sound like kind of fun. Like they get into a real back and forth kind of scuffle.
Right, right.
This is one of those scenes that I really want to see Egyanin and
Yeah.
Bael'Domon, them just for a second having this kind of martial art kind of moment.
Right, right, right. He just like
Um,
dives, he pulls out and pulls a knife and dives at her, and
right.
Elaine and Nynaeve intervene, like, "What are you doing? Stop it!"
Then he explains
That
she
she's
is
Shan-Chan.
Shan Chan.
And Nynaeve's like,
And
"Oh heck no,
yeah, Nynaeve is not okay with this
no."
at all. Elaine's like,
And
okay,
she's like,
well,
"All
hold
right,
on.
well, she's cool. It's okay."
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's been all right so far. But Nynaeve is like, no, no, no. We cannot trust this woman
Right,
at
right,
all.
exactly. But then Julian comes in and says that he knows where the Black Aja are at the Penarch's palace, and Tom
Right.
says the same thing, and Dilmun says the same thing, and so it's like, okay, well, we have bigger
Ag-
fish to fry.
Again, this could be a funny scene where each of them,
They're like, oh, I have
um,
this information.
and like whoever says it first, and then the next person walks in and is like, "I am so smart. I figured out where the,"
Right,
and
right. Like
it's
we've
like,
already
well, we
heard
know
this.
already. Yeah, they all figured it out at the same time.
Nynaeve says that Elaine should bind Egyan's hands, and so she goes to Teleron Riyadh to meet with Egwene to tell her they found the Black Aja. On to chapter 52, and we are back to Nynaeve, who's in Teleron Riyadh. Egwene shows up. Nynaeve is wearing a skirted suit of armor,
Yes,
and both Amis and Bear are with Egwene. And so they kind of like catch Nynaeve up on what all the craziness that's been going on with Rand. So Nynaeve says, "Oh, we found the Black Aja and wants some help with how to handle the world of dreams." The wise ones agrees to teach her a little bit. So Ami says that need is key, and you should concentrate on what you need, and you'll get closer to where you need to be.
I really need a donut.
Right? Are you
Just
Homer Simpson?
really, really need a donut.
Nynaeve converts herself to Rindra, the innkeeper, so that she'll be, she won't be recognizable, and then concentrates on whatever it is that is a danger to Rand in Tanchico. And then suddenly she finds herself in a bedroom with one of the Black Aja, so it worked. Tamil Kinderode is holding Almathera the Penarch captive and making her sing body songs.
Right.
That's kind of a fun image. Nynaeve concentrates her need again. Then she is in the exhibition hall, which I've always imagined this as like a museum with like the
Right.
the little
Those little velvet ropes with stanchions.
exactly.
Yeah.
So she sees somebody else there who's looking at a glass case. Nynaeve realizes that she like sort of remembers this woman and realizes that she's the one who put compulsion on her. So she
Moghedien.
starts to attack. Yeah, Moghedien. And I keep trying to say Moghedien ever since that first book.
Yeah. So
I've got that in my head again.
Yeah, we have to pause for a moment.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
for
yeah.
audiobook listeners, if you're listening for the first time, what you need to know is that they recorded them out of order. And so there are some names that get mispronounced, then they change, and then they change back
Right.
according to when things were recorded. And so Moghedien's name is one of those. And they start off calling her Moghedien. And then they switch to Moghedien, and then they switch back to Moghedien, and then back to Moghedien,
Right.
because of all the stuff being recorded out of order. And at some point, Robert Jordan did intervene with a few of the pronunciations because they were getting it wrong. I say Moghedien at this point.
And you may catch myself saying Moghedien at some point, just because it's like ever since I heard that the first time in the audiobook, because before
Right.
in my head I'd said Moghedien, but then I heard in the audiobook, it's like, oh dang it, I've been mispronouncing it, so I really took
Right.
that to heart, and now
Yeah.
it's like burned into my head a little bit.
Yeah. Gildan is one that I think I say Gildan, which is the way that Michael Kramer says it, but
Right.
it's not correct. It's Gildan.
Yeah,
There's
one I read online. It was sort of interesting. Somebody said, and this does not even match like the glossary. There's pronunciations in the glossary. But somebody claimed that they were at a convention with Jordan years ago, where he said that some of the pronunciations were just way different. One, like Nynaeve, this is just some random person online, claims that Jordan pronounced it Nineveh, which is crazy. Like blew my mind a little bit. Like, and again, that's not even how the glossary has it, but it just
Theoryland.
right.
For that. Are you familiar with theoryland.com?
I am not.
Okay, well, Theoryland is some people with way too much time on their hands, but for our benefit, they transcribed every public appearance that Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson have made in relation to
Ah,
the
interesting.
the series. And so you can search those transcriptions. So if you want to hear everything that has ever been was written down by anybody anywhere or videotaped or audio recorded,
Cool.
it's all there. So you can
Wow.
get into some real nitty gritty when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah, no
So
doubt. I will for this one in particular because I saw that and
yeah,
it kind of like was like that. For one, that is an interesting pronunciation. It does not match what is in the glossary. I mean, it is clearly naive is how it's
right.
spelled out in the glossary. But it would be interesting to see if he ever said that. So Birgitta shows up, and I pronounce it Birgit in my Bridget. I think I even pronounced it Bridget in my head a few times like early on. But Birgitta appears and basically says don't do it. She says this is Forsaken, and the man that she had previously seen was Moghedien. And Brigitte tells Nynaeve, I shouldn't even be talking to you, but I can't let you get yourself killed fighting a Forsaken. And then Gato Kane shows up and says, no, you should not be talking, so let's leave now.
Exactly. And Gato Kane is the ugliest dude anyone has
Yeah,
ever seen.
exactly. I just imagine him like Toad from X-Men with swords on his back and maybe a little stockier.
Yeah, yeah, that could work.
Yeah.
Ray Park.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a nice little nod, especially if he keeps his natural voice, because Ray Park's got a pretty high kind of tenory
Yeah,
voice.
he
It'd
does.
be
That's
kind of funny,
true. Yeah, that's like Darth Maul, of course, doesn't talk almost at all, and
right?
so that's why I just always picture Darth Maul having like a Mickey Mouse's voice for some reason,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is would work for me.
Hey guys, you want to try that spin again? Yeah, why not? Let's do it right there. Yeah.
Oh man.
Apologies to our UK listeners. I have no business doing that.
Nynaeve goes back to the hall because she of course is curious about what Moghedien was looking at, but she sees one of the seven seals.
Sure enough,
And then she sees what looks like an idom, and we later find out that it is I don't
domination
yeah,
band.
domination band. I don't know if we find that out here. I guess so.
I don't know.
But
At some point
yeah,
here,
at some point around here, we find out that this is a male idom. This is the same thing, but for leashing a man who can channel.
right?
She wakes up. It's Elaine's point of view. She kind of tells Elaine what happened. Elaine has freed Aegyanan from her bonds. Just like tells like Nynaeve, like, just be cool. It's okay,
Pale-haired man has attacked Tom, but is now unconscious
Right.
and on the floor since Julian and Bale helped out.
Right, and this is the man that was the seeker for truth that Aegyanan,
Right.
like from the Shanchan corporate man, that Aegyanan recognized. So she's like, we should kill him, but instead Nynaeve's like, no, we'll just throw him out. We don't we have our own fish to fry. We don't need to kill this dude.
Right.
And in chapter 52,
I think that is a good place to pause
I think so.
before
Yeah.
we head into the last episode that we will do on the Shadow Rising. So
Right.
I always want to remind everybody that we really enjoy hearing from you. So visit tsmpodcast.com, fill out the contact form there, and say hello. If you say something nice, we'll give you a shout out on the show. We're also on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram at Podcast TSM. So look for us there. Give us a follow, a like, whatever the kids do these days. Jump in and say hi. Let us know what you think of the podcast. And wherever you listen to your podcast, give us a rating and a review. And as always, if you want to let us know that we're not good at this anonymously, we always have a little survey on our website, again, tsmpodcast.com, that you can fill out to tell us what you like and don't like about the podcast. And that also gives us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about our audience, which is always kind of interesting to see what kind of people are listening. In that, we've got folks from the UK and from Australia and from New Zealand and really all over the world that listen to us regularly, is what it looks like. And so, hey, to all of you, thanks so much for listening. We are really enjoying watching the audience grow, and we hope that if there's something you would like to see out of this, let us know. Jump on one of those ways of contacting us and send us a message of some kind. So, again, Happy New Year, everybody. I hope it's off to a great start. And until next time, Tai'Shar Manetheren.